I'll show you how to make this color changing solar LED light totally from scratch. I'm going to go over today how to make a little solar LED garden light from scratch. Completely from scratch, with you making the little circuit board, having some sort of little glass or plastic enclosure. There's a solar panel at the top, and inside the cap, there's a AAA battery and a little circuit board that I made up, and the LED sticks out like that. These can be used for your own brand new one, or if you have some sort of garden light at home where the electronics or something in has failed completely and you can't repair it. I do have a separate video on repairing those, which I'll give a link to. But if you need like a totally new circuit board, you could use the circuit board as a replacement in whatever existing container you have, and you could even use the existing solar panel or whatever. This is all based on the 5252 part that runs the whole thing, which is based on a regular 1.5 volt battery or rechargeable, and a 2 volt solar panel which will recharge the battery. So you could use a AAA, or to have more power and maybe last longer through the night, a AA battery, and then you can use 2 volt solar panels, but you can get larger ones that have more milliamps that would charge up the battery faster. If it's a AA, it'd be able to charge the whole AA up better throughout the day when the sun's shining. This is the main part for the solar LED, the 5252F. It has 4 pins, and there's the pinout. Ground goes to the negative on the solar, the negative on the battery, and the negative on the LED. Pin 1 is the positive solar, pin 2 is the positive for the battery, pin 4 goes to the positive on the LED. Now I used a color shifting LED that has the color shifting stuff built into the LED itself. I'll have little parts list where you can find this stuff down below in the description and in my article, so you can check that out. To use the color shifting LED, you need to add a capacitor and a diode, and I'll show how to hook that up in a bit, but that all goes on to the pin 4 and allows the color shifting LED to work correctly. So you can either go with a standard LED, it's just whatever, blue or white or green, whatever color LED you want, or these color shifting ones, which are kind of interesting. If you use like some sort of clear enclosure, then it looks kind of cool. This is the completed circuit all built. The black large piece on the bottom is the plastic cap with the solar panel on the top, which is on the bottom of this image. The red wire goes down to the battery positive. The white wire goes down to the solar positive. And the yellow is the positive on the LED, which is the longer lead on the LED. This is a color shifting LED, so there's a diode and a capacitor at the top of the circuit board close to the yellow wire. This is the back of the circuit board. I just cut a little piece of circuit board, so there's a 4x6 pattern of the holes. This is where the solder and just the wires that I bend over from one component to the other so that they attach to the next piece. The parts are on the other side. The basic circuit is the 5252, where it says pins 1, 2, 3, and 4, and just a 220 microhenry inductor from pin 2 to pin 4, and the LED would come off of the pin 4 or where the inductor, because they all connect together. But this circuit shown is with the color changing LED, where you add the capacitor and the diode, and those parts are listed down below. The capacitor goes from the ground, pin 3, over to the diode negative side, which is the side of the diode that has a little bar on it. The other side of the diode connects to pin 4 or the inductor, which is all connected together. The capacitor slash diode minus on the left side, I actually ran both of those leads through one hole in that one case. The rest of the circuit board is just one wire through each hole. One of the techniques I'm using is the components and their lead that come through. The lead is coming out of this hole here, and I've bent it over, and then when I put the wire, I'll put it through this hole that this bent over lead is going by. So I'll solder the wire coming through to the lead at the same time. Same with this hole here, and this hole here, and this is same with this hole here. This is the LED output here. So this one is the solar positive lead, the battery positive lead, and the lead and the ground here. These other connections don't have a wire coming out of them. They're like the capacitor and the diode, where those are soldered together. And I just cut those leads off. But where they join to another hole, I just bend the lead over and then solder them together on the next hole. Make sure and don't miss a hole with solder that you're missing a connection, because it's easy to do, I found out, and then you get a kind of an intermittent LED. I'm using yellow to hook up the positive for the LED, but you could use whatever color wire you have. If you're using the color changing option, the yellow wire will come off of the diode and the capacitor. Let's trim off the excess of this lead. And throw that off. I'll use a black wire for the ground. Lots of stuff hooks up to the ground, so I trim off a longer piece, because I'm going to hook several wires to this. A little short end off the other one to go on the board. Comes off of pin 3. I'll use a red wire to go to the positive of the battery. This is off of pin 2. And trim off the excess lead as usual. Off my solar, the white wire is the positive. Cut off a little bit of that. And off the black, I trim off a lot of the insulation because I'm going to wire it in. Well, if you can see, I'll wire it in with other negative wires. Pin 1 is the positive from the solar. case. Oops. Coming off the ground wire, I need 2 more wires. One's going to go to the battery and one's going to go to the negative on the LED. So since this all goes onto that one black wire, I make kind of a long end. So this one I'm going to make for the LED, one long end. So with lots of wire out of the insulation. And just on the LED on the other side, so just a little bit of insulation off. The long wires we'll put together. The long ends. So I got 4 wires there for the negative on the solar panel. One's going to go to the battery, one's going to go to the LED, and the other one goes to the little circuit board. And this probably doesn't need to be this long, I could cut that shorter. I usually clean the ends of the batteries with a little bit of sandpaper so the solder sticks good. There we go. Tin this red wire. And onto the positive of the battery. Tin the one that's going to go to the negative on the battery. Remember, the other black wire goes to the LED, and the yellow wire is going to go to the positive of the LED. So I'll tin those. And yeah, your wire can be any different color, whatever wire you have or whatever color you decide. It might all be the same color if that's just happens to be all the wire you have. The long wire on the LED is positive. So the yellow wire will go to that. I'm going to put a small piece of heat shrink tubing around these wires to help them not short out after I'm done here. Oops. That's the long wire is the positive. Look up the negative. And then when I scoot this heat shrink tubing up, it will help cover the wires so they don't short out. I can use a little lighter or something to flame to shrink those up in a bit. That's it. If you have these solar caps and you're installing inside of it, like I am, I'm using silicone to kind of glue the battery and the circuit board down in there, and then I'm using this little holder to hold the LED like I want to hang it inside the little glass, kind of shot glass I'm going to be using. So I glue it, or use silicone so that this LED will stay in place just like that when I take that off. So it doesn't look pretty this way, but once you put it upside down and stuff, you don't really see that part on the top of the cap. Make sure and do a good job though. I did a few of these that I did just a little tiny dabs of silicone and they popped out, so I had to redo them. If you just have something like this but you're not using a solar cap, you can use a piece of plexiglass and cut it for the top of this, and then you can mount a regular flat solar cell on top of that, and then maybe have the circuit board and battery silicone to the underneath of that. So when you put that on top, they would have the solar panel on top of the plexiglass, and then underneath just silicone the circuit board and the battery, and have the LED hanging down inside the glass. So that's a different idea I had of mounting if you didn't have these solar caps. Here's examples of little solar panels that you could use from scratch. A 60 milliamp 2 volt, 100 milliamps, same 2 volt, or 160 milliamps, which is the same 2 volt. I also have these little caps. It's 2 volts, I'm not sure how many milliamps they are. It has a glass surface where these others have epoxy coated solar panels to protect them. You could use different kind of glass or whatever that you have around or that you can find to purchase. I think the Dollar General store online had some stuff that you could buy. One of the things if you don't use these caps, if you use something like these, you could use a plexiglass cover to go on top of whatever you have. Like the opening might be really big, so you could use a piece of plexiglass, cut it, silicone that to the top. You could put a hole in for the LED to go through the plexiglass into the whatever container it is, and then you could put the solar panel on top of that and like silicone around the bottom of it so water doesn't get underneath, and just wire it up and have the wires go through the hole, and the little circuit board and the LED could be underneath the plexiglass cover. So you can kind of just make different, depending on your container size, you can make whatever to fit and work on these. This cap just happens to fit nicely on the shot glass. Before I permanently seal these on top here with silicone, I will clean the inside of the glass. Make sure that's nice and clean and not fogged. Since I painted the caps white so the sun reflects better and doesn't heat up the battery inside as much, I thought it might last longer. I just used some blue tape over the solar panel so that didn't get painted. I use white silicone anyway around that to put it on. But at first, to get it to stick a little bit so it's easier to put on the white silicone all the way around, I put some clear silicone dabs on, and then I'll just set it on top of the dabs to let that dry, and that makes it easier to do the whole seal around it without it falling off all the time. I just use my finger and I just use like three separate little dabs around the edge. And how you do yours will depend on how your container is like and how your solar panels are mounted. Make sure and get that centered. I'll just let that dry before I put on the white. It's important to completely seal these up. If water gets in them, water is really the enemy of these solar LED lights. So I'm going to put a bead of white silicone all the way around the edge of this. And then I'll show you how to smooth that out real nicely. So I want to be careful and not put too much. Don't worry about imperfections quite yet, because we're going to smooth it out in a bit. Oops. So much for imperfections. I'm going to just very gently smooth this out a little more. But not try to do it perfectly yet. Just try to get it so it's all the way sealed around the bottom before I do the spraying the water soap solution on. And that causes it to not stick, so it keeps it from spreading where you don't want it. Be sure and have some paper towels nearby. So this is just water and soap. Just wet it like that. I'll wet my finger. And then just go once around and smooth that out. Just like that. I guess I got a little on the glass itself, on the edge. I'll try to get off without touching the above that edge of the glass. So that's all sealed up. I can put that out in the sun and the weather, and it should be good for years until a battery gives out. And I can just pop this top off and put a new battery in. I'll just unsolder this one and solder a new one in and seal it back up with some more silicone. Well, thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe.